How's it going, everybody? Today I wanted to introduce you to my new programming project, the Network Directory Manager. So what is that all about? In a nutshell, it's a tool to dynamically create complex folder structures using MongoDB. Additionally, it's a browser to view your entire database content such as seed files, assets, renders, etc. while allowing the user to inspect those database entries. On top of that, due to the nature of MongoDB's scalability, it provides a foundation to extend the pipeline to second-level applications such as asset management, production tracking, data retirement tools, I/O data registration for applications such as Maya, Houdini, Nuke, etc. So what was my motivation to work on this project? Most visual effects pipelines are incredibly inefficient, and a lot of smaller visual effects boutiques might not even have a pipeline in the first place, since deadlines force them to focus on content delivery, or a lot of the times they lack the budget to hire senior pipeline TDs that can build a pipeline from the ground up. So here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a foundation for a modular pipeline that can be installed quickly and expanded using Python, while storing data in a database that can be easily modified and scaled over time. And that's exactly why I chose MongoDB. It is open source, a very well-documented non-SQL database that comes with a great querying syntax and a huge amount of versatile functions to query and alter data. So far, MongoDB has not been considered a major player in visual effects, maybe because it's still being considered kind of new on the market. However, some big companies that are not necessarily related to visual effects, such as Google, Facebook, Expedia, Craigslist maybe even, they already are using MongoDB successfully. Unlike SQL databases such as SQLite or MySQL, MongoDB's architecture does not consist of a rigid table structure that's very hard to change once predefined. Instead, MongoDB stores its data in JSON-like documents that can vary in structure and be modified at any time. It supports indexing, which makes for very fast database entry querying. Indices are special data structures that store a small portion of a larger data set in a very easy to traverse form. MongoDB's architecture makes pipelines scalable, adaptable to growth, and it gives you the option to distribute data across multiple machines, a technique that is often referred to as horizontal scaling or sharding, which ensures performance during system growth. Without further ado, now that we're done with the introductions, let's dive right into the project. I'm glad you guys could join me today, and let's have some fun. Okay, so in order to start the Network Directory Manager, you're going to have to run a MongoDB client, which I'm just going to do right here. After you got that running, right now I've got a connection on port 27017. I'm going to switch tab and I'm going to run the Network Directory Manager.exe. Right away we're going to be fired into a config dialog, which I'm just going to use at default settings because I don't have time to go over every single parameter. I hit OK. And it's telling us we're successfully connected to the database. I hit OK, and now it's going to prompt us for a server path. So I'm just going to give it a server. I don't have a server installed because I'm just using a laptop here, so I'm just going to use a external hard disk drive for display purposes. I'm just going to select it. I say select folder. I hit OK, and now we got a server added to the database. For sake of this tech demo, I'm just going to add a whole bunch of other folders that are named servers on my desktop as placeholder for real servers. So here I'm going to choose FX Server 1. I'm going to add it, and I'm going to add a whole bunch more, maybe FX Server 2 as well as FX Server 3. You can add as many as you like. Now we got 4 servers installed or registered to the database, and now we can start adding content to those servers. So the way that the tool works, it is working with a concept called folder templates. And I've got a little infographic for that. Each show consists of various sequences that, again, consists of various number of shots. And so we're going to add show template layouts as well as shot template layouts to the database in order to populate shows with content. A show template can look like this. It could be a folder called show template, which will later get the name of the show, which consists of subfolders, for example, client in, client out, editorial and references, and some subfolders. A shot template could look like this. It could be including 2D and 3D folders, as well as application folders such as Nuke, 3ds Max, or Houdini. These folder template layouts are completely up to you. You can have various folder templates, and the way you structure them is totally up to you. Okay, so now that we get that out of the way, I'm going to go into the tool and I'm going to add a show template. I already created one in advance in a file browser, so I'm just going to navigate to that directory here. I'm going to choose the show template. I select it. I give it a name, for example, main show template. I'm going to hit OK, and now we can print the template preview, and the shell will show us what has been registered in the database. So now we get a show folder that has client in, client out, editorial, and references, and so on. I'm going to add a second one just for the sake of the tech demo here. I'm going to add the show template dummy. I'm selecting it here. I'm going to give it a name called dummy show template. I'm going to add it to the database and I print it. And here you see the structure is different. This is the second show template that we added to the database. I hit OK. Now we're going to do the same for shot templates. I hit it. We have a dialog. I'm going to select a shot template that I prepared in advance. I say select folder. I give it a name, for example, main shot template. I hit OK. Now we can print the preview to see if everything went well. It's registered in the database, and now we get a shot template that consists of folders such as 2D, 3D, and so on. I hit OK. And now that I'm going to choose the correct template that I want to use in my content creation. So I select the main show template. And now we can select a server and add a show to it. So I'm just going to add the show Zoolander for now. Let's just assume that we have a Zoolander project in the company that I'm currently working in. I hit OK. It successfully created the show Zoolander. And now, as you see, we have a show that consists of the folders that are the same as the show template that we added to the database. I can do the same thing I can go to server 2 and add another show here. For example, I'm going to add Godzilla to FX server 2, and then I'm going to add, let's say, American Beauty to server number 3. And maybe I'm also going to add on server 4, I'm going to add the show 7. And there you go. We just created, and this is a little lag because of my hard disk drive, we created 4 different shows with the show templates that we had assigned up here. So that's how you use those templates. In order to now proceed with shots, we're going to have sequences first. So I'm going to, for example, in the show Zoolander, I'm going to say add sequences. I'm going to go in here and create a whole bunch of random sequences, for example, AMT, ABC, and MMT. I'm going to hit OK, and now we get those sequences here. Just as a quick reminder, this guy, what you see here is not a file browser. It is in fact a database browser. So whatever you have here represents what you have on your database. If I were to go to FX server 1 and, for example, rename it, let's say our server went offline, then the tool will immediately know this data is not there anymore and it's red. And you can see here, those are pretty much offline folders and offline files. So this here is a database browser. It only represents what's stored in the database. If you would go and add in show Zoolander here, another folder called, I don't know, maybe something like client approvals, it would not show up until you actually add it here in the network directory manager. So I'm just gonna make that, I'm gonna revert that action. So now the data is back online and we can start continuing to populate those sequences with shots. So for sequence ABC, I'm gonna add the shot 10 and we're gonna prefix it with the sequence ABC. We're gonna add a separator between the sequence and the shot, and we're gonna add a padding of 4 digits to the shot number. So I click OK, and it's gonna add show ABC 10. I can go to say fully expand selected, and that will show the entire creation, the entire template that we created from the shot template that has been registered in the database. If I would go to server 1, inside and show Zoolander, we see that we got all of these folders that have been created for us. And in ABC, we get ABC 10 with the folder structure that we desire to have created. Okay, so this has been very manual. In theory, you always want to create shots on the fly or content on the fly. So you can do something like, I want to create shot 20 to 50 with an interval of 10, which will create the shots 20, 30, 40, and 50. You can, within the same dialog, say, I want to create the shots 200 to 240. So you can say something like 200 to 240 with an interval of 20. That will create the shots 200, 220, and 240. I hit OK. in the show details, it will tell us which shows which shots are going to be created. I hit OK, and there you have it. All the shots have been created for me on the fly, and they all have the same shot template. So if I say fully expand selected here, you'll see that we have the same folder layout that we desire to have. So next I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this whole browser here. It was implemented using Python and PySite, and it's in fact a lazy load database model that allows for very, very fast querying of hundreds of folders at the same time without slowing down in the interface. And that's a much better approach than traversing entire folder structures on disk. We are actually just querying what's in the database and what's displayed here in the browser. As you can see, we've got those little expand icons next to shots or any items in the tree view. We're ever and only going to load the data that we're actually going to expand. So, for example, here ABC40 doesn't have any data exposed yet in the browser here. So only if we're going to expand the ABC40 to see what's inside, those are actually going to be loaded into the RAM or into the tool itself. So that makes it for very, very fast performance in the tool. And I had hundreds and hundreds of folders in here just to test it out. It doesn't slow down because we're actually only ever going to load what we're going to need. So if I would go and do something like fully expand selected here, which is going to expand every single shot in the sequence ABC, as you can see, here we get all these different shots, and it's still fast as hell. So there's no significant slowdown when adding hundreds of folders. So with that out of the way, I'm gonna go to the next point of my demo, which are spreadsheets. So imagine now you got a producer that just got rewarded a show. The show consists of a bunch of sequences and a bunch of shots. So let's say we've got sequence AMZ, FAC, GBT, and PRX. You can, if you use Google Spreadsheet, or you could use Excel or OpenOffice for that, you could go here and say download as and download the CSV file, which I did already. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into my tool here. Let's say I click on the show Godzilla and I say populate show from spreadsheet. I go and navigate to the folder where I saved my spreadsheet in. So I just do that. I select the test bidding sheet and I hit OK, and it will immediately tell me it's going to create 4 sequences and 21 shots. And if I go back to my spreadsheet, you will notice that this is the exact amount and the exact number of sequences and shots that we see in the tool here. So I'm just going to click OK, and it's going to create all of those shots and sequences for me on the fly. So let's continue that scenario here. Let's say 2 months into production, the producer got more shots and more sequences awarded because another studio couldn't do the work. So I've got another spreadsheet here, which is shots extended. We've got the same sequences, AMC, FAC, and PRX, I think GBT as well. A new sequence called TMM and 4 shots in there, as well as a whole bunch of other shots for AMZ and FAC as well. So now you can just go back to the tool. You can go in here and you select populate show from spreadsheet again. You navigate to the extended spreadsheet. I'm going to select it. It's going to tell us AMC, FAC, GBT, and PRX already exists. These bunch of shots have been added to the database, but there's a whole bunch of shots that haven't been added. FAC has a bunch of shots that we don't know, that we didn't register yet. PRX as well, and TMM is non-existent so far. I'm going to hit OK here, and it's going to start adding those shots that have been missing before. So here you can see TMM 500 to 530. If I look at the spreadsheet, we've got TMM 500, 510 to 530. So this provides a very, very fast way for a interaction between production and the data I/O department, or production could even do that themselves. So adding shows and shots and sequences from spreadsheet is now a piece of cake, really. Next, let's talk about adding files to the database. So let's assume in show 7 under references in images, we want to add a bunch of files, assuming they have been added on disk. I'm going to right click on images, add files, and I'm going to select a bunch of files that I added earlier to the directory here. I'm going to say open, and those files now have been added to the database. And that brings me to my next point in the tech demo. which is tagging. If I click on a file here, like on this guy, and I say inspect database entry, it will show me the MongoDB data document that has been stored on the database, and it will show me that it has a tag, which is isFile, that's the key, and it stores true in its value. It also knows which show it belongs to, which is the show 7. So if I go back to my tool here, I don't know if you guys noticed, but in the configure database dialog, we have a parameter which is create custom folder text for. Right now, by default, Houdini, Maya, and Nuke have been added to this little parameter field here, but we can add more parameters, like for example, rainbow. And right now, case-sensitive matching is off. I click OK, and now it's going to reconnect to the database and refresh everything. If I go back to show 7, and I go in here and I add a custom folder called rainbow, it's going to match the pattern against what's saved in the tags that are default now. I hit OK. And now if I inspect the database entry for rainbow, which is just a random folder now, we have a tag called rainbow in here. So let's take that a bit further. For example, in a show earlier where we added a bunch of shots and shows, if I click on the folder nuke and I inspect the database entry for this here, we see that nuke has a nuke tag, it has a shot tag because it knows which shot it belongs to, it has a sequence tag, it belongs to the sequence ABC, and it has a show tag, it belongs to the show Zoolander. And this is great because that way we can create second level applications like asset management and start grouping things by their type. We can also have production tracking tools. For example, Shotgun has tagging features where you can group stuff by type. This is kind of similar. So tagging will allow us for very fast querying and also using the indexing that I mentioned earlier that MongoDB supports. So indexing for tags will make for very fast querying within the database. Now that we talked about tagging, let's quickly talk about duplicate database entries. If I will go to server E and add the show Zoolander for the second time, because we already registered Zoolander on server 1, I'll do the same thing with FX server 3, for example. I add the show Zoolander. And I click on one of those entries and I inspect it. Then we'll notice that right now we are having 3 servers that are registered for one single database entry, which means we're dealing with unique database entries only. I'll take the example a little bit further. I add a sequence called ABC for show Zoolander on FX server number 3. And under ABC, I add a bunch of shots, like 10 to, let's say, 60 with an interval of 10, which will create the shots 10 to 60. I click OK, and now we see that we have those shots already up here. So we have them twice, and I click on one of those, and I say inspect database entry. We notice we are on 2 servers, FX server 1 and FX server 3. That means, even though we add duplicate items to our tree view here, we are just going to create a unique entry for the database and thus keep the overhead to an absolute minimum, which ensures database performance. Next on the agenda, we have the combined tree view mode. But before we get into that, let me quickly add a few more shows in order to add more database content. So let's add the show The Grinch on server number 1. And let's add, let's say on server 2, the show Mad Max. So we have a bunch of shows on our server. I'm gonna go and switch from display separate servers to display combined servers. So you can hover over the header here in order to check the color coding and which servers are available or registered to the database. So what is this whole view? When spreading a show over multiple servers like we just did, it provides a convenient way to display all available shows not split by their server, but rather color-coded according to which server they belong to. It also gives the option to create new hierarchies on new servers with automatic parent hierarchy creation. So what does that mean? The show Zoolander, for example, right now is registered on server 1, on server E, and on server 3. So let's say I'm within Houdini and my pipeline programmer, for example, he made a second level in and out application in order for me to save my scenes files from Houdini. So let's say I'm in shot ABC 10 and I'm working from Houdini. Let me quickly navigate. And let's say I want to create a folder called caches because we're registered on a few servers, but those servers are already full. So let's say we want to add a folder called caches to the server number 2, which right now doesn't have much content. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to add a custom folder called caches, and I'm going to switch the server to a server that right now we're not even registered to yet. So what the tool is going to do is going to create all the parent hierarchy for you on the fly, and it's going to register the new folder called caches on the server number 2. If I click OK, it's going to ask me, are you sure you want to do that? I click OK, and a bunch of clicks later, you got the folder caches, which is now registered to server 2, but we sit within Houdini, which is already registered on 3 different servers now. So if I go and I go back to display separate servers, we go to FX server number 2, we see that now we've got a show Zoolander here. If I expand the whole thing, you'll see that we only have the directories that we need in order to create the folder caches. And if I were to go to the FX server on disk, and I go to Zoolander and I click myself through there, we actually see the folders have been created on disk. So that's great. So I quickly want to talk to you guys about the admin mode. Some of you might have noticed up here in the header that we've been running in admin mode throughout the entire tech demo up until now. And that is because we launched the tool for the very first time, and we had to define some important parameters such as the MongoDB host name or port number. By default, let me just do that. I relaunched the tool quickly. If you relaunch the tool, admin mode will be disabled. And that is because I made the conscious choice to hide functions like retiring shows, deletion of database contents, or moving a database between servers, because those actually should only be taken by a person who has the executive power to make decisions that could possibly impact an entire studio, right? So if you're a producer, great, run the admin mode. If you are maybe just a technician who doesn't really decide if a show gets retired or not, it's probably best not to run in admin mode. However, if you make the mistake to create a folder that you don't want to have in the database, you can always toggle on the admin mode and then just do stuff, right? So it's not completely hidden from you, but you make the conscious choice when clicking on toggling to admin mode that you could do some damage possibly, right? So let's, for example, talk about retiring shows. This system makes retiring shows very easy because we're just pretty much hitting a switch inside of our database entries. So if I have a show called Zoolander, I can just right click on it if I am in admin mode, and I can say retire show. The show will disappear from the menu. Down here, you have a checkbox called hide retired shows. If I uncheck that, the show will be grayed out and unexpandable pretty much because I can't use the show anymore. It has been retired. If I would go to the display combined server view, you see that show Zoolander also is grayed out. If I go, for example, select the show Grinch and I retire this one, same thing is going to happen. It's going to gray out the show. So that is retiring. You can also unretire shows if you absolutely have to. If I click on Zoolander and say unretire show and I hit OK, it's just going to unretire the entire show. I can do the same show, for the Grinch show. I select it, say unretire, and it's going to unretire my show for me. And that's retiring. That's really all there is to it. Now let's talk about database content deletion. And up front I have to tell you I didn't allow for physical data deletion on servers or hard disk drives because in my opinion I believe that's a job for a proper data retirement or cleanup tool. Instead, I allow for database content deletion in the admin mode in order to facilitate the deletion of database entries that have been created by mistake. Okay, let's see how that works. If I, for example, go to FX Server 2 and I duplicate the Grinch, which is already on FX Server 1, and then I click on the Grinch and I say delete selected from database, it's going to prompt me a new dialog and it's going to ask me from which server do you want to delete the Grinch. So I can say, by default, it's obviously going to select the server that I selected in the tree view. So I can select all or deselect all or just select the server that I'm interested in. And now if I hit OK, it's going to remove the Grinch just from server 2. It's still present on server 1. If I want to get rid of it, I can say delete selected from database. Right now, there's only one server left. I hit OK, and it's now gone from the database. And this is actually something that you can't reverse. Maybe in the future, we can start thinking about maybe possibly backing up the entire database before content deletion, just in order to have like a little fail-safe in there. If you go to the display combined servers mode, let's have a look at the show Zoolander, which currently sits, I believe, on 4 different servers. So here it's very interesting. If you say delete selected from database, and you, for example, select only server E, and that's the color that we actually coded in right now, because it kind of like it indexes into which server has been registered first, and that's how the color gets assigned. If I just remove server E and I hit OK, you'll see that the color suddenly changes because server E is no longer available. Right now, the next server in the indexing is green, which is server 1, and so now the show turned green. If I continue doing this stuff, for example, right now we're green and I just select server 1, so now we're deleting the show Zoolander only from server 1. The color is going to change again, and now show Zoolander is only present on 2 servers, and so on. If I want to select all of them, I can just do that. I select them and I hit OK, and now the show Zoolander is gone. And that's database content deletion for you. So the last topic in my presentation is going to be moving data from one server to another. And just like with the deletion of database entries, I do not support the physical act of copying data from one server to another, because we're talking about terabytes, possibly petabytes or exabytes of data. And that could take a night, it could take 2 days in order to copy that data from one server to another. And that's not really the purpose of my tool. However, if that's something that you guys think is a desired addition for the tool to have, it's really easy to implement. I just thought this tool is not really built for this. However, we still support the relocation from one server to another if we're just talking about database entries. Let me quickly show you what that means. If you have on server E 3 shows lying House of Cards, 7 and Waterboy, and you want to just move the data from one server to another, and we're talking about database entries now, I can just do that with pretty much 2 button clicks. Now we see everything that we just had on server E is on FX server 1 now. However, the data is offline because it hasn't been moved physically. So in order to sync it up again, it would be very easy for me right now to just grab the shows that were missing. I just, let's see, it was 7, Waterboy, and House of Cards, I believe. And I go to FX server 1 and I just paste them in here, and now the database will sync up again. Like I said, if you guys think that the physical act of moving data from one server to another is very important, let me know, and I consider implementing it. It's not a big deal. Okay, wow, that was a lot of stuff to go through. For those of you who made it through the entire tech demo, thanks so much for tuning in, paying close attention, and I hope you guys had fun and were interested in some of the key concepts that I was outlining in this presentation. So in order to wrap this up, I'd like to show you guys fun Python statistics module that I wrote, the Network Directory Manager Statistics. It's just going to parse a bunch of Python modules that I wrote. Let's see, the total number of functions written, 266. The total number of classes written, 25. The total number of dialog pop-ups, 68. And the total number of lines written, 9,302. And the total number of Python modules used, 15. Here you see I used regex. I used it excessively. It's super awesome. I use argparse, great little module. PySide, obviously, PyQt PySide, very, very useful to know for any programmer. PyMongo, like I said, if you don't really know MongoDB, get involved. It's an amazing database. Okay. So one more thing, I wanted to give a big shout out to my friend, colleague and mentor Marcus Steets, who is a brilliant physicist and computer scientist. He acted as a mentor throughout the projects, gave me guidance, outlined a few concepts to me that I wasn't really familiar with before, such as databases, what's different between SQL and non-SQL, and so on. Thank you a lot, Marcus. You really helped me along the way, and I learned tons of stuff. So big shout out. Last but not least, I wanted to talk to you about ETD, Effective Technical Directors. That's a website that my friend Goran and I and Eloy, we created recently. Let's see, effectivetds.com. Let's see, there we go. We have a forum section, and in the forum we already have a bit of traffic going on, especially in the 3ds Max section. We try to be a forum for effects cities, that is not software specific. Like I said, we handle 3D Max, we handle Houdini, although our Houdini community is very small at the moment. So guys, please sign up and start posting. We would love to give you guys some guidance along the way, no matter what level you are, if you're entry level or a seasoned senior, please sign up and just like start engaging with the community. That being said, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you have any questions, any feedback, if you're interested in what I do, please just write me an email and I'd be happy to get in touch. Thank you.